Alright, Unified Facility Criteria, UFC004 August 16th, 2010, Designing Petroleum Fuel Facilities, approved for public release, distributed unlimited. Chapter 3. Chapter 3, Bulk Fuel Storage Facilities, Introduction. This chapter provides guidance for the design bulk fuel storage facilities, including bulk storage tanks. These components are normally located with a typical bulk storage compound. These components include the pipeline receiving facility, tanker truck or tanker car release, uh, receiving facilities, pipeline dispensing pumping facilities, tanker truck or tanker car loading facilities, related piping and equipment. Fuel storage tanks are discussed in Chapter 8. Piping systems in Chapter 9 of the UFC. Support facilities were discussed in Chapter 11. Or of this UFC are often collocated with bulk facility systems using received suspension aviation turbine fuels, discussed in Chapter 4 of this UFC. Systems used to receive and dispense from barges and ships are discussed in Chapter 5 of this Unified Facility Criteria. Disinstallation pipelines connecting bulk fuel facilities with most receiving dispensing aircraft fueling facilities, ground vehicles, fuel facilities, as well as internal pipelines, is discussed in Chapter 6 of the Unified Facility Criteria. Retrieve Facility Plate 001 for the entire identification plan pertaining to the Unified Facility Criteria. Note that if aviation fuel can become pumped directly from a tank into the aircraft direct fueling system or refueler, treat the tank as an open operating storage tank regardless of the size. Location must meet the applicable requirements for aviation turbine fuels. Operating tanks to the exemption of the bulk storage tanks are configured to fill refuelers with the emergency base as only. Alright, 3.2 General Requirements. Chapter 2 General Design Information contains important information on fueling facilities. Do not begin with the design of the fueling system without first becoming completely familiar with Chapter 2 of this UFC. 3.3 Receiving Facilities. Fuel is normally received at a bulk fuel storage by pipeline, tanker truck, or tanker car, barge, or ship. In many cases, the fuel is pumped in the pipeline from the marine receiving facility to the bulk storage facility. Marine receiving facilities are addressed in Chapter 5 of the this Unified Facility Criteria. Service headquarters, in concurrence with the Defense Engineering Support Center, will determine the appropriate type of the delivery method on the basis on the mission requirements and economic analysis. Second method of delivery is normally required for the aviation requirement activities. 331 Pipeline Receiving Facilities. 3311 General Criteria. Petroleum fuels may be supplied to bulk fuel storage tanks, intermedial pipelines, which may be dedicated to serving particular facility, or may be commercial pipelines handling a number of types of grades and fuels for more than one user. In so many cases, the pipeline will be installation pipeline. It is different fuels. This types are used and separated each type of the receiving facility. Extreme exercise care to avoid designing a system that could create a damaging surge in the pipeline created by the quickening closing valves. 3312 Equipment required. Provided with a pressure regulating diaphragm with control valves to reduce the pipeline pressure for the design of the pressure facilitating piping and equipment that provide manual isolation valve with both the upstream and downstream side of each diaphragm control valve. Prior to design any feature of the system which may affect the flow of the pipeline, contact operated with the pipeline to assertion of the control operating conditions, evaluating use of the diaphragm control valves, conducting surge analysis of the pipeline, determine whether the use of the diaphragm control valves is appropriate. Provide a meter with the receiving end of the line to measure the quantities of fuel received. The turbine type that are most commonly used at the pipeline receipt. However, the positive displacement meters are acceptable, available to the required flow rate. Consider consider also the alternative meter technologies such as ultrasonic meters to compensate for the fuel temperature at the point of custody transfer. Provided with a basket strainer up on the upstream side of the meter. Connections from proving the meter with a portable prover. A meter prover connection consists of the manual installation valve with the mainline pipeline and with a T both in the upstream, downstream, and the side of the valve. The branch each of the T's of the manual isolation valve and the hose connection with the mass meters can be attached with the hose connection. C. Provide means for the sampling of each pipeline product with the breakout manifold. Provide provision for the contractor bolt pig launchers. Receive the system for pigging after pigging and receiving the connections to avoid introduction pipeline sludge of the sediment in the tanks. Pig launching and receiving the provisions are required for the internal cross-country installation as described in Chapter 6 of the Unified Facility Criteria. Underground pipelines provide interface tank with the received mixed fuels at the beginning of the end of the shipment unless with the commercial pipeline company and provided with a service satisfactory. Provide breakout only with the pipeline that flow cannot be stopped due to the pipeline operation requirements. Provide the valve to defer the flow of the fuel from the pipeline to the breakout tank in the event of the fuel transfer is blocked by a manual automatic valve. With the fuel facility system, such as the fuel facility system would be overpressured through transit surges, high pressure with the deadheading, pipeline supply pump provided with appropriate breakout tank overhaul alarm and alarms breaking out operations so fuel the facility operators can take necessary steps to stop the pipeline flow. Provide means of transferring fuel out of the breakout tank to the fuel system after the breakout event. Conduct a thorough review of the pipeline operator performing a transit surge analysis to determine if the surge pressure reductions methods are required to avoid damage to the pipeline. G. Provide means for the inbound filtration for all the products. Selection filtration depends on the anticipated impurities such as source of the fuel and the shipping methods. Consider the use of the micrononic filters, cyclonic filters, and high-pack coalescers are possible filtration devices. Avoid the use of water sludge, shut-off diaphragm control valve with the rapid closing of the valve of the pipeline receipt facilities for the inbound filtration. Aviation turbines refer to the special bound infiltration paragraph in Chapter 4 of this UFC. H. Provide manual installation of the valves to isolate the equipment of service. Provide basket strainers upstream for the pumps and meters and receipt filtration. Provide thermal relief stream valves around the isolation. Check the valves and relieve the excessive pressure caused by thermal expansion of the liquid trapped between shutoff points. See the facilities of 023, 024, and 025 and 026. Provide a concrete housing keypad unless otherwise directed with the service headquarters. A canopy to protect the fixed facilities access to the equipment of the elements such as canopies in paragraph of this chapter. 332 tank, truck, and tanker car offloading facilities. 3321 general criteria. Bulk fuel storage facilities may be supplied with the fuel tank, truck, or tanker car, or both. If facilities of the pipeline, the water transport of the principal supply source are provided with the tanks and tank car deliveries and secondary supply sources. Tank trucks deliveries are most common method. However, the special transportation consideration changing circumstances may make use of the railway facility desirable. Therefore, any activity with the railroad service arranged with the tanker truck receiving the facility so that the system can be easily and economically extended to the existing rail spur. See facility plate 02. The preferred offloading method of the dropping the tank offloading system is see facility plate 3. Provide a package offloading system when the drop of the tank of the type of the offloading is not practicable. The offloading trucks and the tanker cars due to the environmental concerns, see limitations or cost consideration and or directed by service headquarters of facility plate 04. Provided with a directed loading system when only an occasional tanker truck requires offloading when direct service by headquarters. See facility plate 05. Do not locate the tanker or the tanker truck or the tanker car receiving the facilities closer than 50 feet from the tanks of the building or roads. Overhead power lines or padded mounted transfers property lines comply with an FPA 30 for the assuming the property line with the fuel farm finance. They use the criteria for the class 1 liquids. Regardless of the product, do not take any reduction of the fixed fire protection. Provide adequate number, minimum of 2 of the position of the offload of the daily fuel requirements for the facility in an 8-hour period without causing detention or during mirage of the delivery conveniences. Provided separate offloading connections for each type of the fuel to be handled to facilitate the tank of the truck. Multiple independent compartments provided with a hose manifold with a minimum of 2 connections per tanker car. The manifold with those hose connections equal to the number of the truck compartments recommended with a quick turnaround. There are less than 5 connections provided with a binding flange at the end of the manifold. Accommodated additional connections. G. Provide contaminant area with each of the crew offloading position consisting of an impermeable retention control drainage system leading of the control remote spill control system. Pave the containment area consisting with the islands, the spaces between the islands on each side of the outer islands, which concrete pitch with a minimum of 1% told with the catch basin or trench design. Design the containment in accordance with the UFC004 federal, state, local regulations. Do not use asphalt with spill contamination area. Within a spill contamination area. The maximum slope of the paving of the truck movement over the parking area should not exceed 2% except for the roll over the curbs. If the roll over the curb is provided, the sum of the vertical entry of the existing grades shall not exceed 8%. Horizontal length of the curb in the direction of the truck movement should not be less than 15 feet, and the roll over the curb should be assigned with the perpendicular with the direction of the movement. A tanker offloading car and offloading areas paved with the containment are the country otherwise provided with the containment for the area extend with the 5 feet outside each of the outer rail, extending longitudinal 15 feet each way from the center of each of the loading position slope in the paved area to spill contamination as described previously. I. Provide concrete remote spill containment systems for each of the containment area. Design a remote spill contamination system in accordance with the UFC004 federal, state, local regulations. Remote spill contamination system with a capacity greater than either the room of the largest tanker truck or the tanker car compartment to be offloaded with a runoff of the rain valve with a rainfall with intense equal to the 5-year acceptance with a 1-hour duration storm, provided with a lockable knife getting the valve indicated with the proposed located outside of the enclosure in the area where it will be safe accessible during the fire. The value of such lockable and non-closable to allow contamination during the field operations, which can be open to drain area when necessary. The tanker trucks can be large as 10,000 gallons of capacity, with the tanker cars as large as 40,000 gallons. If a canopy is installed, reduce the size of the rainfall, outcounting with the wind-blowed rain. Consider the combination of rain spill contamination system and other spill contamination systems on the site, except for the tanker containment system. However, the tank of the level of the contamination in each of the contamination area in the consideration. J. The construction of the drain pipe between the contamination area and the control remote spill containment system. Between the remote of the spill containment system, lockable knife gate with the valve of the petroleum-resistant, fire-resistant, and permeable materials. Do use clay, concrete, fiberglass, plastic piping materials. For unloading tanker trucks, arrange the flow of the traffic to permit continuous forward movement of the tanker trucks at all times. Commercial landing of the tanker trucks provided with the passenger side. To determine number of connections needed for the offloading tank, consult with the service headquarters. Consider minimized tank of the car movements, tanker car shipping schedules, conveniency, turnaround times, local rail switching capabilities. Quantity of fuel needed for the 1 day's fuel supply. Provided an electrical design that meets the minimum requirements for the NFPA 7077 and 780. Test the combustible liquids under the pressure of flame liquid. Provide canopy for the protection from the elements of the fixed facility assets, equipment for the canopies, paragraph of this chapter. Provide a canopy to preclude with any of the rain contaminant area when the requirements are listed in canopies, paragraph of the chapter are met. Provide the egress entrance for the emergency response vehicle and the egress of the entries routes needed large enough to allow both of the trucks and emergency vehicles leaving and entering the facility, provided with the means of inbound filterization of the product. The selection of the filterization dependent the anticipated impurities of the source of the fuel. Shipping methods considered microconic or cylindrical filters or hayback calipers. As possible filtration devices for inbound filterization of aviation turbine fuels, refer to the Chapter 4 of this unified facility criteria. 3322 tanker truck and tanker car drop-off loading system. The introduction of the air into the fuel receiving system poses the extreme hazards which can result in fire or explosion. Hazard compound with an air filter mixture pass through the receipt of the filter separators with the static electricity is generated. Ignition can occur. Design off the loading of the facility so that are not introduced with the system for the facility composite with the offload silver old tanks and trucks at once. Whenever the new tank of the trucks and multiple hoses are connected in multiple isolated compartments, consider the provided underground gravity receiving tank and the submersible transfer pumps. The level controls for the smaller systems, 1 or 2 tank trucks control low profile above ground receiving tank and central figural transfer pump for either the case provided. Level sensors to control the flow, provided with a temperature compensated meter of the receipt line and the tank of the position of the transfer of the custody for materials of construction, offloading drop tanks off. Refer to Chapter 8 and Facility Plate 003. 3323 tanker truck tanker car package offloading system. For any tanker truck or the tanker car loading with offloading the drop tank may be practical due to environmental concerns, limitations, and cost consideration. In these instances, provide 1,600 gallons per minute package off the loading system provided with one package including the vertical line central figural pump, the diaphragm controls valve, the control flow meter, multiple hose connection for one in each of the tanker truck's compartment. For each tanker truck or the tanker car receiving station, provide an eliminator tank to remove the air system, reducing the risk of the air-fuel mixture passing through the receiver. The filter separators preventing the meter of the air. Level sensors are the air eliminator tank of the petroleum pump, the discharge diaphragm control valves, modulate flow rate based on the level of the eliminator tank. Refer to the Navy fact drawing numbers 1404005 or facility plate 04004. 3324 tanker truck and tanker car direct offloading system. When using an occasional tanker truck requires their offloading when directed with the service headquarters. Refer to the facility 05. 3325 equipment required. When the tanker truck or the tanker cars are offloaded with the drop-off tank, the loading system do not provide with the offloading pump. Provide at least the 2 pumps in the drop tank and the transfer of the fuel in the storage tank. When the tanker cars and the tanker cars are offloaded with a package of the offloading system provided with one system for each of the tanker truck and the tanker car that is to be offloaded simultaneously with the average capacity of 600 gallons per minute each. The number of the systems shall be determined in service to the headquarters that should be a minimum of 2. Their capacity of the system may be reduced to 300 gallons per minute each of the only with directed service headquarters. When the tanker truck and the tanker cars are offloaded with a direct offloading system provided with the central figural pumps, provided with a provided with automatic air elimination as shown in facility plate 005. Plate provided at least 2 pumps that allow the continued operation of one of the out of the service. The capacity of the pumps is being increased to the 600 gallons per minute each only with indirected service headquarters. The center of the height of suction line of the manifold pipe should not exceed 23.25 inches or above the truck unloading marked position with the located of the pump as close as the possible offloading point to prevent suction problems. Provide a 4-inch diameter with a 10-foot long, lightweight, reinforced vacuum rated with the offloading hose and covered with the hose storage racks for each of the hose connection for each of the offloading positions. Eliminate the covered hose storage rack if the offload of the rack is still covered by a canopy. Ensure that the swivels are non-lubricated in aluminum and stainless steel in line with a repairable type. Consult the activity to verify that the need of the hose since any at the same location the fuel hauling contractor provides the hose. Each equipment tanker truck offloading position with the electronic intrinsically safe and automatically safe monitoring ground verification until the lockable bypass of the ground is not verified. There is an offloading pump dedicated to that position. Ensure that the unit prevents the pumping from the starting the stone. The pump is not dedicated to ensure the alarm sounds if the offloading valve is open with prior to the ground verification, including separate ground serial and accommodated vehicles without ground equipment. F. Provided emergency fuel shutoff or EFSO published stations for the truck offloading with the multiple position of the emergency fuel shutoff push button stations required for each position along the route of the possible ingress of the grass and between 100 to 200 feet with the offloading positions designed in such a manner that the activation of the emergency stop will shut off all the fueling of the offloading area and the associated pump house and the pump pad. G. Provide fuel sampling connections at the position wherever each of the line with the collecting test samples. Provide pressure gauges on both sides of each of the strainer with the differential type of the gauge across each of the strainer with the strainer in the upstream with the pump suction gauge may function as a strainer downstream gauge. Provided with a compound, the pressure vacuum gauge on the inlet side of the pump, the pressure gauge on the outside of the pump. And if this system is JP5 and the other fuel that does not have the static dissipator additive, which provides with the conductivity of the level greater than 50 can inductivity units or 50 pico Siemens per meter. A 30-second retention is provided with between the filter separator and receiving tank, provided with a relaxation tank downstream filter separator to ensure a compound 30-second retention time, the time relaxation tank from the time of the piping. Provide the basket strainer upstream in the meters with reads and filterization. Provide with a combination of flow and control non-surge check diagrams. Control flow all of the offloading pumps except for the positive displacement type. If the bulk air eliminator or automatic air release head is included, provided with means of the closing of the diaphragm control valve and the solenoid pilot. And provided the power positive displacement turbine meter with the meter proving the connection to the best meter of the temperature compensated with the capability whenever the custody of the transfer occurs, provided with the basket strainer over the upstream side of the meter. Alright, on each side of the loading connection with the offload and loading risers, the install of the visual flow fuel flow indicator with the maximum pressure of the 275 psi's at 100 degrees Fahrenheit with the Viton sees of the maximum temperature rating with 350 degrees. This will allow the visual quality assurance to provide with the operator with a backup system to shut off the pumps and with offloading is complete to prevent the air from building up receipt lines. Provide manual installation valve to isolate the equipment from service to provide the thermal relief and around the isolation check the valve, then relieve the excessive pressure caused by the thermal expansion of the liquid trapped between the shut-off point. See the facility plate 023, 024, 025, and 026. 3.3 Marine Offloading Facility Chapter 5 see Chapter 5 of this UFC. 3.4 Dispensing Facility. 3. Fuel is normally dispensed on a bulk facility via the installation of pipeline in terminal pipeline or tanker truck or tanker car. 341 Pipeline Pumping Facilities. 3411 General Criteria. As discussed in Chapter 5, the Unified Facility Pipeline criteria pipelines are the either internal pipelines, installation pipelines, are commonly used for the transfer of any aircraft fuel facility, marine dispensing facilities. In-terminal pipelines are cross-country between installations. However, since the pipeline pumping system are typically a bulk fuel storage facility, they are covered in this chapter. 3412 Equipment required. A. Central figure pumps complying with the API standard 610. Adequate head of capacity always provided with additional pump as a backup. B. The turbine positive displacement meter with proving the connections considered can also be given the alternative meter of the technology such as ultrasonic meters. Compensate for the fuel temperature as custody transfer point provided with fuel sample and connections collecting them to the test sample, provide launching of the receiving capabilities and terminal installation pipelines, strain upstream to dive of the meter pumps, manual double block and bleed isolation valves, which are total isolations is required, pressure gauge of the both and sides of the strainer and a differential pressure type of the gauge across the strainer. Compound or pressure vacuum gauges on the inside inlet side of the pump, and the pressure gauges of the outside side of the pump. They provide with the combination fluid control non-surge check of the diaphragm control valve, all positive except for the positive displacement types. If the bulk eliminator and the ultimate air release has been included, provide with the means of closing diaphragm control valve with the solenoid point. J. Provided isolation valve with the isolation equipment for the service provided with the thermal relief of the valve there, and also isolation check of the valve to relieve the excessive pressure caused by the thermal expansion as on a liquid trapped in between the shutoff points. See facility plates for 023, 024, 025 with provided a concrete housing pad unless otherwise directed with the service headquarters or canopy protected with the facilities, assets, and equipment for each of the elements. See the canopies in paragraphs of this chapter. 342. The tanker truck and the tanker car loading facility. 3421. General criteria. The chapter applies the facility required for the loading over the road with the tank of the truck transportation. The rail tank car is used for the bulk transfer of the fuel. The typical application transfer of the tank of the truck from the storage terminal to the second storage, such as filling station or a heating plant. In many cases, the receiving and loading facilities are combined. In this case, the both the receiving and the loading facilities requirements must be addressed. This chapter does not include the facilities for the loading aviation refuelers to the direct use of the aircraft. The process requires special design consideration discussed in Chapter 4 of this unified facility. See facility plate 002, 003, 005. Determine the volume of the fuel and number of the tanker trucks and tanker cars to be handled with the operational analysis assistance from the service headquarters. B. Do not locate a tanker truck or a tanker car loading facility closer than a minimum of 50 feet from the tank's building, roads, overheads, power lines, mounted transformers, property lines comply with an NFPA 30. Assume the property line of the fuel farm fences the criteria for the Class 1 liquids regardless for the product. Do not take a reduction of fixed fire protection. Do not locate the tanker truck loading a facility closer than 100 feet from the railroad track or spur or railway siding or loading offloading facility, fueling facility. Bottom landing is the only acceptable method of loading tanker trucks, and tanker and trucks. Bottom landing, you results in included safety, manpower savings, quality control, area cleanliness, and a non-USC locomotive where the only top loading tanker trucks are available. Install the top loading of the rack with the permission service headquarters in the event provided with the future bottom loading capabilities. Provide for the containment area each of the truck loading positions consisting with an impermeable retention control drainage system leading to the concrete remote spill containment system. Pave the containment area consists of the island space between the islands on each side of the outer islands, and the concrete pitch with a minimum of 1% toward the catch basin, the trench drains, to design the contamination area in accordance with the UFC 200 federal, state, local regulations. Do not use asphalt with spill in the containment area. The maximum slope of the paving of the truck mounted with the packing areas shall not exceed 2%, or excepting the rolling over curb. If a rollover curb is provided with such a vertical entrance, existing grades shall not be exceeded with 8% of the horizontal length of the curb, or the direction of the truck movement now should not be less than 15 feet. The rollover curb shall be aligned perpendicular with the design of the truck movement. Any tanker car loading area is provided with the containment area with the concrete and otherwise proving containment for the area extending 5 feet outside each of the outer rail, extending longitudinal 15 feet each of the way of the center of each loading position. So the slope of the pave of the split bill containment system as described in previous item. Provide concrete remote spill contamination system for use for the contamination area. Design the remote spill contamination system in accordance with the UFC 200.01. Federal, state, and local regulations provide the remote spill contamination system with a capacity greater than either the volume of the largest tanker car compartment to be offloaded runoff of the rainfall intensity equals to 5 years acceptancy. 1 hour duration storm provided with a lockable knife on the gate of the valve indicated with the post located outside of the enclosure in the area there will be safely accessible during the fire. The valve shall be lockable, normally closed to allow the containment during the fuel operations, which can be opened to the drain area when necessary. The tanker trucks can be as large as 10,000 gallons in capacity, and the tank charge should as large as 40,000 gallons. If the canopy is installed with reducing the size of the rainfall with the account of the wind blowing rain, consider the combination of remote spill contamination system with other spill contamination systems on site, except for the tank contamination system. However, that level to take the level of contamination in each of the containment area into the consideration. G. Construction of the drain pipe between the contamination area and the concrete remote spill contamination system. Between the remote and spill contamination system and the lockable knife gate valve with the petroleum-resistant, fire-resistant, impermeable materials. Do not use clay, concrete, fiberglass, or plastic piping materials. Provide a canopy protection for the elements fixed in facilities assessing the equipment with the canopies paragraph of this chapter. Provide a canopy to preclude the remaining of the containment area when the requirements listed in the canopies paragraph of the chapter are met. J. Provide separate piping and pumping loaded connections control of each of the different types of grade of fuel. Arrange load racking with a row of islands with the insufficient clearance between the allowed to easily access all parts of the tanker trucks from the park. Arrange the islands approach with the manner that allows the forward motion of all the tanker trucks and all times ample room for the turning of the space and the range of the bottom loading islands accommodated with one tanker of the truck. Only the side adjacent to the tanker truck liquids of the connection, usually the passenger side of the tanker truck. L. Provide the entrance and egress of the emergency vehicles in M. If top loading is required for the tanker cars, normally only when the commercial contract leaves no other choice, approved by the service headquarters, provide a typical tanker car loading rack with an elevated steel platform consisting of a walkway 4 feet wide to 10.5 feet above the top of the rail, full length of the 6 tanker cars, ensuring the center line of the structure with 10 to 5 feet above the center line of the tracks, equipment of the platform with the counterweighted with the spring loaded tilting bridge, connection of the tanker car dome at each of the loading stations is designed so that the release for the horizontal position of the bridge automatically move the lock in the upright position away from the part of the tanker car under weather the conditions. Sure conformance with the UFC004 requirements per platform is not required for the Air Force projects. Alright, 3422, tanker truck fill stand equipment required. Provided with a positive displacement turbo meter for each of the tanker truck will fill the connection and protect each of the meter upstream of the basket strainer. Include the temperature compensation if the rack is to be point of the custody transfer, provided with the fuel sampling connection for the cam collecting testing sample to provide pressure gauge on both sides of the strainer and differential pressure of the type of the cross of the strainer, provide fusible link with the butterfly isolation valve at the first piece of the equipment and the direction of the flow on the loading position valve is not required for the Air Force projects. Make the provision of the start and stop pumps with the start and stop pump that controls each of the position, including the pump status and indicating the light on the control box. F. Provided solenoid operated tanker truck loading diaphragm control valve with the opening and closing speed control pressure regulating checking the solenoid start off features interlocking with the solenoid electrical high level shut off and ground verification dead man control systems. G. That provided each of the fill position electronic high level shut off ground verification dead man control system. The system shall be intrinsically safe and self checking and interlock with a system that either the solenoid operated with the truck loading the diaphragm control valve of the pump or the pump the such that the value cannot be remain on the pump open or the pump cannot operate if the tank truck compartment is full, the tanker truck is not grounded, or the dead man is released. Ensure the system is compatible with both the electronic fiber optic sensors. Manual key pass may be required parallel effort beyond the project scope to ensure that all trucks have facilities having compatible connections to the facility have the truck that do not have fixed probes. Use the cam probes instead. This unit is optional for the Army projects of the option only tactical revealers the connection with the service headquarters for the guidance. H. Provided emergency fuel shut-off button station for the fill stand with a multiple position. The emergency fuel shut-off button stations is required for each of the position along the routes of the personal ingress with the egress between 100 and 200 feet of the fill stand is designed in such a manner that the activation of the emergency stop will shut off the fueling of the pump house or the pump or the pump pad. I. The equipment liquid connection to the tanker trucks at the bottom loading the dry couplers in accordance with the API RP 1004 for the refer to Chapter 2 for the Unified Facility tier of the guidelines of vapor collection recovery for the disposal system. K. Provide heaters for the insulated with the heated pipelines as required. Viscosity fuels that are loaded to maintain the temperature of the fuel is minimum pump temperature. L. Provided the stainless loading alarm to the panographic without the hose that equipped with non-lubricated swivels may instead the hose of the approved with the service headquarters ensure the swivels are non-lubricated stainless steel and repairable type. And provide a meter proving the connections that are described in the paragraph titled Pipeline Receiving Facilities unless local procedures provide an alternative. And the provided relaxation type of the proper piping configuration sufficient capacity to remain in maximum flow of the loading station over the 30 seconds of the time the fuel leaves the last piece of the filtration equipment for the fuel reaching the loading nozzle. Applying the JP5 with the other fuels with do not have static dissipation additive that provides a conductivity level greater than 50 picosiemens. O. Provide a basket strainer upstream with a meter and pumps. Provide manual isolation valve with the isolated equipment service. Provide the thermal reliefs around with the isolation. Check with the valve. The relief of the explosive pressure could be thermal expansion of the liquid trap between the shutoff of the facility 023, 024, 025, 026. Grounding and bonding reel provided with the integral part of the high-level shutoff system. As to provide the hydraulic shock surge suppressor if required. Alright, 3423, tanker car loading station equipment required provided with a positive displacement of the turbine meter with each of the tanker car filled with the connection protect each meter with the upstream basket strainer include the temperature compensation if the rack is to be point of the custody transfer to provide the meter or the connection as described in the paragraph tilted with the pipeline receiving facility unless local procedure is provided with an alternative for the fuel system sampling connections to the collection test samples. Provide the pressure gauges on both sides of the strainer, differential pressure to take a type across the strainer. E. Provide fusible link with the butterfly installation valve to the first piece of the equipment in the direction of the flow of the loading position valve is not required for the Air Force project. Provide loading connections, control valves, etc. on one of the both sides of the floating platforms and specify with the service headquarters load tanker cars from the bottom using a counterbalance articulated tanker car loading assembly. Provide an electronically intrinsically safe with portable liquid high level sensor adjustable height at each of the loading racks to prevent an overfill or an interlocking sensor for the electronic high level shut off the ground verification and dead man control system. H. Provided electronic high-level shut-off with ground verification dead man control system. The system should be intrinsically safe and the self-checking interlocking system with either the solenoid operated with the tank car or loading diaphragm control valve with the pump such that the valve cannot be remaining open and the pump cannot be operated with the tank of the car's fuel. If the tank of the car is not grounded with the dub dead man is released, provided with the capability to connect with the ground verification rack of the railed tanker car frame. Provide emergency fuel shutoff buttons and station for the fuel station with the multiple station. The emergency fuel shutoff system button station is required to each system, each position along the routes of the personal ingress of the grass between 100 to 200 fill here from the fill stand. Designed in such a manner that the activation of the emergency stop with the shutoff valve shut off all the fueling at the pump house of the pump pad. J. Provided solenoid operated with the tanker car loading diaphragm control valve with the opening and closing speed control pressure regulating check and the solenoid shut off the feature interlocks the solenoid with the electronic high level shut off with the ground verification dead man controls. K. Provide a basket strainer upstream with the meters and pumps. Provide a manual isolation valve to isolate the equipment for the service. Provide thermal relief valves and isolation check valves to relieve the excessive pressure caused by the thermal expansion of the liquid trapped between the shut-off points. See the facility plates 023, 024, 025, and 026. Provide relaxation tank of the pipe configuration sufficient capacity to maintain the maximum flow loading station of 30 seconds at a time of the fuel for the last piece of the filterization equipment. The fuel reaching the loading nozzle applies only to the JP5 and other fuels does not have the static dissipation additives that provide the conductivity level greater than 50 picosiemens. Provide hydraulic surge suppressor if required. 3543 Marine Loading Facility, see Chapter 5 of the Unified Facility Criteria. 35 Piping Systems, refer to Chapter 9 of the Unified Facility Criteria for the more information regarding piping systems. 3501 The product segregation, except with otherwise approved by the service headquarters, provided with a separate receiving storage distribution system for each of the products, except otherwise approved by the service headquarters, prevent misfueling, transfer of the type of the fuel other than the type of the intended for the use of the different side of the pipe of the valves, adapter, the nozzles, etc. 3.6 Equipment description. The appropriate guide specification standard design provided with the specific information for the appropriate equipment selection, the making, the provision of the drain equipment, of the maintenance provided with the hand pipe at the drains. The equipment holds more than 5 gallons of the fuel. When the pipe has drained the product, the recovery tank is 12 feet on the equipment. 361 Bulk air eliminators use the flange connected with the steel body of bulk eliminator to the desired pressure flow rating applicable service requirement, including the automatic air pressure headed with the interlocking equipment with the flow and solenoid operated hydraulically operated diaphragm control valve that provided with the discharge pipe and the product recovery tank over the safer means of containment. 362 meters provided with the meter swivel mounted cylinder heads of the truck's fill stand to accommodate the varying truck and operating positions. 3621 meters positive displacement. Use the flange connected with the cast steel body positive Displacement meters of the appropriate pressure for the flowing of the rate meet applicable service requirements. Ensure the meter that has the drain and register provide the temperature and compensation adjustment with the calibration capabilities where the custody is transferred. Each of the meters accessories are compatible with either mechanical or electronic support equipment selected, provided accuracy plus or minus 0.5% when used in custody transfer. Consult the appropriate service headquarters with the requirement of the meter to communicate the remote location of the equipment. Consider the use of the card operated with a key, operated with a data acquisition system. Refer to the card key locks under the controls paragraph of this chapter. 3622 meters and turbines. Use the flange connected with the steel body turbine and the appropriate pressure for the flow of the range of the applicable service requirement provided with the flow of the strain before the turbine. Meters provided with the straight length of the pipe at the minimum 10 pipe diameters upstream, pipe diameters downstream of all turbine meters as required by the manufacturer. Ensure the meter that has been a drain and has a case of the drain and register. Provide the temperature compensation adjustable calibration capabilities with the custody transfer. Provide an accuracy of plus or minus 0.5% when using custody transfer. Ensure the supporting equipment for the meter capability of the turbine meter is selected with the consulting approach of the service headquarters for the requirements of the meter. Communicate and relocation of the equipment. Consider the use of the card operated with the key, operated with the data acquisition system. Refer to the card and key locks under the control of the paragraph of this chapter. 3623, meters orifices. Use the type of the meter only when custody transfer accounting of the inventory control is not required, provided with the flange connection, provided with the flow straighter before the orifice meter, provided with the straight length of the minimum of 10 pipe diameters upstream of the 5 pipe diameters downstream of the all orifices or meters as required by the manufacturer. 363 pressure vacuum gauges. The use of liquid-filled gauges of the range from dial size is necessary, not less than 0 to 160 psi Gs, or psi of the gallons, pressure ranging from 4 inches of the diameter dial. Gauges shall be all stainless steel construction, black graduations on white faces. For extreme temperature environments, consult service headquarters of the direction possible. Use of the air-filled gauge. For locations where the temperature is less than negative 2 degrees Fahrenheit, use appropriate gauge liquid that will not freeze to prevent damaging of the gauge. Alright, A. Consider the location of year-round weather condition service requirement, the type of the liquid filling to be used. Gauge liquid in service ranges. The glycerine range is 0 to Fahrenheit to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Silicone is negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit to 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Provide a lever handle the gauge cock of the pressure snubber in each of the pressure gauge connection. Provide indicating record pressure gauges on suction discharge line, internal pipeline pumping station, on the incoming line of the delivery terminal on each edge of the pipeline is required with the service headquarters. Pressure gauges shall be installed so that they are testable without the removing of them gauge of the piping. 364, requiring the strainer to protect central plugs unless precludes the meeting of the net of the positive suction of the pump. Whether or not strainers are installed with the suction on the side of the central figural pumps, require the spool piece with the temporal strainers can be installed during the startup of the system. Strainers are required with the suction side of all the pump meters and receipt filterization. Although used flange basket strainers constructed with steel fitted with removable baskets of mono metal and stainless steel mesh, large mesh reinforcements provided with a quick opening single screws type of the drain connection in the bottom. B. Provide a fine screen mesh as follows. A pump suction is set mesh of 7 is 0.108 inches. Pump section positive displacement mesh of 40 is 0.16 thousandths of an inch. Receipt filterization 40 mesh 0.16 thousandths of an inch. Meter inlet upstream downstream filter separator mesh of 40 0.16 thousandths of an inch. In all cases, ensure effective screening. Error is not less than 3 times the cross-sectional area of the pump provided with the pressure gauge of the both sides of the strainer, differential type of the gauge across the strainer. Surge suppressors. Every effort should be made with the control of the hydraulic surge shock to acceptable limits of the design of the piping system rather than to be used for surge suppressors. Whether there is not be possible with extremely impractical surge suppressors may be incorporated with the use of the diaphragm bladder type of equipment for the top-mounted liquid-filled pressure gauge with the water system style. I'll check valve at the bottom of the drain above the check of the valve, the isolation valve. Provide needed valve around the check valve to permit the controlled bleeding of the back of the surge suppressor without rebounding. Locate the surge suppressor as close as possible to the point of the shutoff that is expected to cause the shock. Surge suppressor can reduce the shock of the pressure, but will not eliminate the entirely preferred solution with the hydraulic shock. The conservation pipe design uses the loops and slow closing valves. Surge suppressors are strictly last resort solution and require approval of the service headquarters prior to the designing of the system. 366 pumps. 3661 design requirements. Design pumps deliver the full range operation condition anticipated to any of the facility. The flow rates are presented with the Chapter 2 of the Unified Facility Criteria. They ensure the pump is level sufficient head to overcome the friction, static head loss of the system, and rate of the flow with concern of specific gravity and temperature, viscosity, vapor, pressure, and corrosive slow out. All of the properties of the fuel, its range given the specific gravity, etc. Paragraph 2.3, the large volume and the purpose of the calculation for any single grade fuel and contact pumps in parallel, selecting according to the type of the most suitable with a particular application, does not use positive displacement reciprocation pumps over the product issue of the pipeline transfer, provided enough pumps to allow the system to operate with the full capacity with the largest pump out of service. 3662 central fecal pumps. The API standard 610 of the central fecal pumps to the pump the above ground tank the continuously flooded suction. 663 for vertical pump turbine pumps. Use the API standard 610 vertical turbine pump to pump the underground tanks. Do not use the horizontal transfer pump to pit alongside the underground tank as an alternative. 3664 rotary pumps using the sliding vane positive displacement self-pumping priming central figure pumps approaching the streaming pipeline. Similar services where the pump may be frequently lost lose its prime with the pump provided with the pressure relief valve located on the discharge side of the pumps. A varying speed motor can be used as positive displacement pumps to gradually priming the pump to normal operation speed. Note that on positive displacement pumps the pressure relief valve should be considered safety relief valves, not operating valve. The valves modulated on the normal basis to the main of the set pressure. Use the relief of them modulated with the pump discharge pressure volt rates over the permanent warranty. 2665 divers permanently installed with the pump's electronic motor, which is properly classified in accordance with the NFPA 70 size drivers to be not overloading at any point of the curve that provide an anti-reversing ratchet and all vertical turbine motors. 3666 material construction using carbon steel modular inner casting of components refer to Chapter 4 of this UFC for aviation turbine fuels requirements. 3367 installation mounting permanently installed the pumps in the substantial foundation reinforced concrete design in accordance with hydraulic institution standards. 367 valves. 3671 material of construction general service. The material that require the valves the carbon steel bodies of the bonnets accepted with the aviation turbine fuels. Valves are generally served as the most maybe internal nickel bladed with the internal epoxy coated. Do not allow the valves to be aluminum, cast iron, or bronze material. Use the only API fire safety valves. Alright, 3672, the material construction aviation turbine fuel service. Valve materials in contact with the aviation turbine fuel shall either be stainless steel that's chrome plated with the carbon steel electrolyte nickel plated carbon steel. Do not allow zinc coated with the copper bearing materials in contact with the fuel. Do not allow the internal epoxy coated valves. Require manual valves aviation turbine fuels that have stainless steel bodies and bonnets. The carbon steel bodies are permanently provided with the internally plated with the nickel plating. Do not allow aluminum, cast iron, bronze bodies valves using API fire safety valves. 3673 isolation valve types. Double block bleed isolation valves. 1. Use the separator of the products and tank or shell connection with the piping goings above and below the ground between the piper and the tank pier and the tanker storage. Other locations critical to the pressure testing piping. 2. Plug valves. Double block and bleed using the double seat of the taper lifted lockable plug type of valves. The body bleed between the double block head seats shall be either designed for the synthetic seating material is burned out into the fire. A metal to metal seat will remain with the effective closure and comply with the API standard 607. Lubricated plug, whether or not allowed, included integral body of the cavity, the thermal relief. Alright, ball valves, double block and bleed. Use double seated with the true and mounted with lockable ball valves with the body of the bleed between the seats of double block and bleed. These will use very rarely but are acceptable alternatives to double block and bleed plug valves. The application of the valve is operated with very infrequently. Example, the isolation valve of the pits when they are only closed to perform pressure testing piping. The valves should be only designed so that the synthetic seating of the material is based on the fire. The metal seating will remain to effect the closure and comply with the API standard 607. Integral body of the cavity thermal relief valve. The gauge valve double block and bleed is double seated with the lockable gate valve type valves. The body bleed it is between the seats of double block and bleed. There was rarely used as our acceptable alternative to the double block and bleed plug valves and the double block and bleed valves. Only other double block and bleed valves will not physically fit. Valves shall be designed so that the synthetic seating of the material is burned out in the fire. In a fire, metal seat will remain in effective closure and comply with the API standard 607. The single-seated gauge valves are not allowed to include an integral part of the body cavity thermal relief valve. Be quick opening, frequent opening isolation valves. Use these for less critical applications where double block and bleed shutoff is not required. Ball valves. Ball type lockable valves are designed so that the synthetic seating of the material is burned all out in the fire. Metal and the metal seat will remain in effective closure and comply with the API standard 607. The Teflon Viton synthetic seals seating the material for the full port valves where lapping line picking is required for the wood 10 pipe with the diameters upstream with the 5-point pipe diameter downstream with the flow pressure control valve. The flow sensing device is ventricle. To add a ventricle, the valve shall comply with the API standard 608. Butterfly valve, high performance water treating butterfly type of design for the synthetic seating and the material burned out in the fire. Metal to metal seat will remain in effective closure complying with the API standard 607. And using Teflon Viton synthetic seals or seating materials using the valves of the high performance for the type of the eccentric disc of the shaft of the clamping action for the bulb. Old tight shut off and provide only with the inlet truck fill stand only on supply return riser on the aircraft direct with the fuel station with a fusible length required release of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. These valves are not required to be nor permitted with the Air Force projects. Use the fuel ports and exactly the same diameter of the pipe and the piping is required. 3674, the isolation valve operators. Manual operated valves are not specified with the remote automatic emergency operation geared for the operators for the ball or double block and bleed plug valves larger than 6 inches. Double block and bleed gate or ball and double block and bleed valves specified with the remote automatic emergency service may have electrical motor operators if operated with the service headquarters provided with a locking tab on the isolation valve to allow the padded lock to be used to lock out the valves during the maintenance. Provide the chain operators on the valves which are located with 72 inches or higher above the grade. 3675. The isolation valve of the location provided the isolation for the piping system to control the flow with the permanent isolation equipment. The maintenance for the repair provide additional valve location necessary to conduct a valid hydrostatic test. Require manually operated valves except for the motor operated specifically authorized for the applicable standard drawings. The technical specification of double block and bleed type isolation valves and separation from the product separate services the and shell connection. The AST over 12,000 gallons only when the piping goes above or below the ground. Where it appears in tanker storage, other location critical periodic pressure testing of the piping opening frequent opening type of the isolation valves may be used for less critical application of the double block and bleed. Shut off is not required. A minimum requirement provided the isolation valve at the following locations. A. Where the pipe goes under the ground and becomes above the ground requires periodic pressure testing. B. It also services approved piping connections to storage tanks on each of the branch line of that pipe of connection to main product of the pipeline header. On the product pipeline with the header just before the lines leaves the piping station. On such a side of the discharge with each of the pumping unit except for the suction side vertical central fecal pumps installed with the underground tanks. On the upstream, downstream of each of this line and a connection with the cross of the country pipelines. On the inlet-outlet connection with the other lines, trying to filter separator meter diaphragm control valve. Other equipment that requires the periodic servicing outlet inlet valve. The outlet valve may be used if they isolate more than one piece of the adequate equipment which are connected within series. On each main distribution pipeline and immediately downstream with the branch connection with each existing future operating storage facility served in the pipeline. On the above ground pipeline, each of the tank of the car, tanker truck with offloading connection, and each inlet with the gravity drop tank. On above ground piping with each tanker car and a tanker truck loading connection, a critical roadway, runway, taxiway crossing, considerably isolation valves, both sides of the runway, taxiway facility, hydrostatic testing and isolation. 3676 isolation valve pits provided with the fiberglass concrete spill, concrete fiberglass and concrete pits with the rolling and hinge cover designed for the corners for the Air Force standards design AW78-2428. The isolation valve is insulated, installed with the non-traffic areas, the underground fuel system, designing valve pits and valve operated so that the valves can be operated with the personnel without confined space entry. 368 other valves except the diaphragm control valve, the check valve, using the check valve to prevent black flow from the pump, the branches, meters, and other locations running back to the reverse flow must be avoided. Check valves may be swinging the disc and the globe, the dual point, a hinge disc, and a spring-loaded pump, pivot, ball, and diaphragm actuated type. Use the check on the soft-seated, non-slamming type of the renewable seat with the disc. Ensure the check valve is conform with the API spec 6D, and use non-charge check with the diaphragm control valve with the flowing control valve, each of the discharge all of the pumps. When using the non-surge, check the diaphragm control valves on the pump discharge. Consider the use of the spring type of the water check with the diaphragm valve to prevent the sudden flow of the reversal from the shutdown of the passing back through the pump before the diaphragm control valve. The diaphragm chamber is filled with the reacts with the closing of the water. 3682 thermal relief. Provide the thermal relief around the isolation check valve to relieve the excessive pressure caused by the thermal expansion of the liquid trapped between the shutoff points and C facilities plates 023, 024, 025, and 026. Alright. 369 diaphragm control valves. Hydraulically operated single-seated with the global type of diaphragm actuated control valves are used extensively in fuel system as control valve. These valves consist of the main valve and the pilot control system. The main valve consists of the body diaphragm covered that operated with the varying amount of the pressure above the diaphragm, since the chamber above the diaphragm exposed with the greater about area of the diaphragm to the chamber, the pressure of the area of the disc above exposed to the line pressure for the equal pressure from the chamber of the pipeline results in the greater forces being applied to the top of the disc. This force is disc against the seat without the closing of the valve by selecting the proper pilot control system. These valves can be used in numerous ways to control flow of the pressure level of the fueling system. 691 open and closing operation. The basic function of the hydraulic operated with the diaphragm control valve. The operation is accomplished by applying the pressure approved by diaphragm to close the valve and the relief valve with the pressure to allow the line pressure to open the valve. The pilot trim is used to perform the operation of the three-way valve, which can be controlled by the solenoid and hand pressure differential and float. 3692, the throttle operating. There's other main methods of controlling a hydraulically operated diaphragm control valve. In the case of valve modulated to any other degree opening, responds to the change of the throttle control. The throttle control reacts with the pressure differential across the main valve, the pressure differential across the orifice plate to regulate the position of the disc and main valve with the proper operation that the valve shall installed. Straight pipe of the both sides valve, the 10 pipe diameters upstream with the 5 diameters for the downstream side with the position provided with the fuel port manual isolation valve is they place with these limits. 3693 check the valve function. The unique function of the control valve, in this case the main valve outlet pressure is connected with the diaphragm cover, therefore the downstream outlet pressure exceeds the inlet pressure that normally holds the valve open. The valve will close and prevent the backflow. Note that in order the valve close it must backflow. Sometimes a substantial amount of time, considering putting in the regular check of the series of the valve, is in the case of the concerning 3694. The hydraulically operated diaphragm control valve can be operated remotely. This is accomplished by installing the tubing at the point of the pressure sensing of this valve and then using the remote control solenoids of the trim. 3695, the materials of the construction using stainless steel pilot control valve, stainless steel tubing. The use of the bodies and bonnets cover the main made stainless steel is internal plated with the chrome steel, and internal plated with the nickel modular iron. Provide Viton butane diaphragm disc rings enclosure on all electrical apparatus according to classification of the area that which are installed. Provided with the means to wire a seat. All adjustable pilots do not use an aluminum valve. 3693 and then 3696. Application: the fuel filling system with the hydraulically operated diaphragm control valves in the following applications are so referred to the specific chapters in application: water slug shutoff, rate of flow control, pressure reduction, pressure relief, liquid level control, non-surge check control, dead man control, electrical block control. 397. The combinations. A combination of these controls, if it is also possible, typical use of the controls is on a filter separator with the water over the water slug shutoff and the rate of flow control. 3610 thermometers. Provide thermometers of the burner fuel number 5 and 6 distribution piping system, each loading the receiving point on an inlet and outlet for each heater. 3611 fuel hoses for each of the sizes required for the design flow rates of the use of the flange rate. This flange and nipples using the carbon steel brass, except for the aviation turbine fuel C issue part points using the brass and stainless steel, aluminum where the metals parts contact the fuel. Alright, 3611 loading fuel hoses provided with the pressure loading hoses for connecting and comply with the EL standard 1529. 3611 2 offloading fuel hoses provide lightweight, flexible, non-pressurized offloading hoses constructed with nitrile rubber, rigidly polyvinyl chloride helix, synthetic braiding, smooth bore, and corrugated outer diameter. Provide no pressurized hose with a 65 psi rating at 72 degrees Fahrenheit to 27 degrees hydrogen vacuum. 37 controls. Alright, 37 control. 371 design requirement. Automatic controls in any of the facility may include the temperature, pressure, fuel level, the pump controls, automatic fuel controls, alarm limit switches, motor operated isolation valve, the solenoid piloted actuated diaphragm control, remote system control, condition indicators, or other forms of automatic control of the remote meter indication, electronic access control, data logging, application computer technology based on the section advanced automation telemetry system on a study of a particular application with the consideration of possible economy justification. Operational security requirements. 372 flow controls. When possible to achieve flow rates with exceeded the equipment ratings, provide an adjustable flow control valve on the other outlet connection of each of the meter filter separator. Using the diaphragm control with control of the pressure differential across the orifice and venture in the main line when necessary to provide with the remote operated valves on the storage tank of the inlet lines, the suction discharge of the transfer pumps and the transfer lines and the fuel piers and other locations. 373 pump controls. Operation pump suction discharge may be part of the automatic sequence of the starting the central figure pump, the shutting down of the remotely locally protective shutdown of the served device. The remotely operated valve at the discharge side of the pump can either be motor operated with the solenoid pilot type of the hydraulically operated diaphragm control valve. The remote control valve at the suction side of the pump can be motor operated valves only with the equipped valves with the green and red opening and close indicating lights for the push button control locations. Consider the use of the PLCs. A more complicated system. 3731 provided that the following controls: a key hand auto button for each of the pump the key with the hand off the auto switch with the motor started with the remotely operated pump. Both devices light and will use the same key. Indicator lights for the control station give the positive notification when the pump is operating when it is not energized using the push to test type. A single light arms to indicate the pump with the failure when the pump is controlled with automatically reduced voltage storage from the required electrical utility supplier in all the cases of pump motors greater than 50 horsepower and all vertical pumps. Emergency fuel shut-off buttons and push button station between 100 and 200 feet of the pump. Expected ingress and egress direction to maintain context provided with the additional emergency fuel shut-off button. Starting the stations, the point of the fuel delivery, receipt fills of stands, pure tanks, and etc. using the same spacing and location requirements. 3732 multiple function pumps. Multiple function pumps are typically used with small facilities and are designed to arrange to be able to perform different functions such as loading, offloading, and transferring to developing, depending on how valves are aligned. Provided with any of the function control system requirements for each of the functions described in the Untitled Chapter for each of the multiple tasks. Provided with a manual selector to choose which in the set of the control set with the points of the pump is to look at when performing the particular function. 3733 transfer pumps. Transfer pumps are used to supply the fuel to the tank of the truck loading facility, tanker car loading facility, and transfer fuel from one place to the installation to another. Bulk storage facilities, open storage tanks. If these pumps exceed 50 horsepower, complying with the paragraph in pipeline pumps and chapter, in addition with the requirements of the paragraph of the pipeline pumps in this chapter, provide the transfer pumps with a push button start-stop stations, which these pumps are used to product and or car loading, provided with the push button and controls adjacent with the pumps and each of the loading system. The programmable logical controllers for the multiple pumps supply heater with the loading multiple tankers to obtain the desired flow from each of the loading station. 3734 pipeline. For the pipelines over the 150 horsepower, provide the protection shutdown device with alarm central supervisor control station in the event of the following: high pump case temperature due to the block discharge, excessive pump vibration, mechanical seal or packaging gland failure, high discharge pressure and loss of the discharge pressure, excessive motor vibration, high motor wind temperature, electrical interlocks with the preventing the starting of the pump in the certain key setting and not corrected within the cause of the pump, of the shutdown with the key valve, the setting with the change, the loss of the pump and the suction pressure of the high bearing temperature and or loss of the cooling water flow. 3735 temperature controls. Provided with the temperature controls at all the fuel oil filters control the oil temperature with the safe limits, provided with the sensing element with the fuel outlet which activates the thermostatic valve of the heating medium supply connection with the heater using the self-actuating control valve that requires the external power of the closure, usually manually at the set point of each temperature variable other than over the desired temperature range, provided with the bypass around the control valve with the V-port globe and the ball valve for the manual operation. 373 card and key locks. Consider a possible economic operational advantage for the use of electronic and key systems, which permits 24-hour unmanned operation over the facility. This type of the system compromised with the car key reader, which is located near the service pump. The reader is activated with the card or key. They automatically issue the consumer data, which is downloaded to the consensual computer on the periodic basis. All activities of the capitalized fuel, the petroleum product owner of the Defensive Logistics Agency and the DESC are eligible for products installing the automated card and key lock system. The activities will capitalized fuel report inventories of these products. The DESC through the system control business system modernization engineering BSME. The automated system with the control capitalized inventories must be able to ensure that the BSME, Business System Modernization Energy, these three types of automated systems are managed under the Automated Fuel Systems Service Station. From the DESC, it should be noted that the automated fuel service station equipment is equipped with a control issue. The product is not automated with the tank gauging system. Further information of the automated fuel service station system finding of the programs may be obtained with the containing the DESFE. 3.8 Canopies. 3.81 Canopies to protect fixed assets. Unless otherwise, the service head to provide with the canopy to protect the fixed facility equipment with the elements fixed facility equipment, including bolt but not limited to pump pads, filterization pads, meter pads, isolation valve pads, the tanker truck, tanker car, offloading and loading equipment pads, and control panels, electrical. Panels of the motor control centers of the electric instant ensure the structural design in accordance with the UFC004 and with UFC00301. The canopies that replace the stormwater do not provide a canopy to preclude the rain reaching the containment area unless it's required with federal, state, local regulations economically justify reducing the size of the concrete remote spill contaminant, the spill containment system, and or directed service headquarters after a canopy over the tank of the truck or the tanker car loading and offloading contamination. Ensure the underside of the canopy is high enough to provide operator headroom when walking on the top of the tanker truck or the car. Ensure the structural design in accordance with the UFC 200-01, US 3-30101. 3.9 Product recovery system. Provide with the product recovery system the correct storable, usable aviation fuels that would otherwise become waste for the operational maintenance activities. Consider a product recovery system for other products. See Chapter 8 for the unified facility criteria for the product recovery system. 310 fuel additives. If directed by the DESC, provided for the bulk storage facility with the store aviation turbine fuels for the equipment and injection fuel additives. This will require the proper injector store of the additives capability, recirculating the tanks through the piping the injectors, additive to the corrosive characteristics, consulting with the system, including storage in the tanks and tank appurtenances. Pumps is required and pipe associated with fittings and valves, injector assemblies, and stainless steel components. Chapter 4 Aircraft Fueling Facilities.